Hello, Active Sage here on the Sage channel, and that update we've all been waiting for oh so long has finally come to us. That's right, planets are here. But before I start going over some of the features, I have to point out that planets are unfortunately only available on DirectX 11 machines. That's right, if you have a DirectX 9 only machine, you will not be able to play it. So it might be that time to upgrade your graphics card to one that's capable of running DirectX 11. Please ensure the rest of your system is capable of running the card though, so you don't get any nasty bottlenecks. Well, with that out of the way, let's move on to some actually interesting stuff about planets! Well, first off, there are 3 types of planets, and I'm just going to go ahead and read through these, and you'll see some images corresponding to them. We got Earth planets, or Earth-like planets. They have oxygen, and they have an atmosphere. They got poles, they got icelands, they got mountains, they got woodlands, they got deserts. And they got all sorts of different plants to fill all these out, as you've just seen. Next, we got Martian planets, which have no oxygen, which means don't take your bloody helmet off. And they have a thin atmosphere, which I'll get onto atmospheres in a bit. And they have poles, and they have everything else that isn't a pole. Next up, we got alien worlds. That's right, ladies and gentle sausages. There are alien worlds out there with terrifying, dangerous things. So we got low oxygen here, so you can take your helmet off, but don't expect to be taking many deep breaths. And it has a very dense atmosphere. They also have poles, icelands, mountains, woodlands, deserts, spiders, and plants of their own sorts, as you've just seen. Next up, we got all the moons for these wonderful things. We got Earth-like moons, which have no atmosphere, and they only got poles and no poles pretty much. We got Europa-like moons, which, again, no oxygen, and, yeah, thin atmosphere this time, actually, believe it or not. So, guess what? You can use other stuff I'll get onto in a second. And then we got Titan moons. No oxygen, and a thin atmosphere again. And you've heard me mention atmosphere 55,000 times now. Well, what does that mean? Well, atmosphere does not necessarily mean there's oxygen on the planet, like the Martian one, for instance. It has no oxygen, yet it does have a thin atmosphere. So you might say, okay, so lower the atmosphere, this oxygen? No, look at the alien world. Low oxygen, but dense atmosphere. No, this is just the density of the atmosphere. That's like one of the reasons why some of those moons have an atmosphere to them, like Europa and Titan. What an atmosphere basically means is that you'll be able to use a new block that's been tossed into the game. That's right, a thruster that's been put in the game, a atmospheric thruster. Ain't it fancy? And what this basically does is it works exactly like your standard ion thrusters, but they instead of working in space like the ion thrusters and stopping working the second you go into an atmosphere, it's the other way around. These fanciful atmospheric thrusters work in atmosphere using only energy, and if you go ahead and take them to the space, well, there's not really an atmosphere there, they're going to stop functioning. Of course, if you want something that's going to work in atmosphere and out, you can always use hydrogen thrusters. Just keep in mind, though, that you're going to be gobbling away all your hydrogen. It should also be pointed out that you probably saw a bit of water on these planets. Well, it's not necessarily water. Well, it's water in a different form. It's ice. Ice. Lots of ice on these planets. Currently, there's no flowing water. The devs really wanted the guy who, there's one bloke who is trying to code away at it. Hopefully we'll get there, but no promises on that. What else do we have? Well, I did mention we had spiders. Yeah, those only spawn on the alien worlds. You go ahead, you get some spiders coming at you, you kill them off. If you kill a whole bunch of them really quick they won't come back for quite as long. If you barely manage to kill them off, they might come back a bit sooner because they're like, hey, you're an easy target. They can burrow, they can pop up pretty much anywhere, so don't expect yours to be safe just because you built some walls. They'll pop up right under that. They usually spawn, I found, within about 5-10 blocks of you. And speaking of threats on planets, well, what else do we got here but some good old land-based pirates, or actually sort of looks like more like enemy factions to me, and they'll go ahead and spawn and send stuff after you. We actually have about 3-4 new starting worlds, and most of these have a pirate base or enemy faction somewhere nearby, and they'll go ahead and send little drones after you every few minutes or so. As long as you keep your ammo stocked, you should be alright. Now, mind you, I did say drones. That's right, drones are going to work on planets. As long as you have collision avoidance turned on, drones will be able to keep themselves hovering, I don't know, about 10 to, well, tens of meters off of the surface is how the devs actually put it. But if you want a drone to go down maybe into a cave you've drilled or up or something like that, you're going to have to disable that collision avoidance and set that drone to, well, follow a very, very carefully set path using GPS coordinates like the old days. It should also be pointed out that thrusters will keep you floating. As long as you get enough thrusters to keep yourself manually there, the automated system will once again keep you hovering there. So no cheatsy doodle thrusters as far as I can tell in a quick check at least. So let's say now you think all this is fun, fine, dandy, and a lot of great stuff to hear, and you decided, you know what, I'm going to jump into my old world and go check me some planets out. Well, you might want to hold up there, buddy, because your old worlds aren't going to have planets suddenly added to them. In fact, the majority of worlds aren't going to have planets in them. You have to start a new world and select one of the ones that has something to do with planets. These planets are specifically placed in there. Now, 50% of their surface and 50% of the materials, well, 50% of the surface is sort of automatically height generated and set up into the biomes I've mentioned and shown so far, and then a lot of that is actually randomly generated ore nodes, and you might even see dark areas on the surface of a planet that tell you, dig here, sexy, and you dig down there and you're going to get yourself a large ore deposit. One thing you won't find down there is uranium, though, because, believe it or not, they decided to make uranium pretty damn scarce on planets to encourage you to use solar panels and electrical batteries to power your crafts while on planets, and maybe get a bit of hydrogen, too, to get your thrusters going to get you off that planet. And once you get into the stars, then you're going to find yourself some good old-fashioned uranium to power up your generators. And you might be saying, but Sage, why do I even need to bother getting hydrogen to get myself off the surface? Well, my friend, you don't necessarily have to. You can on some planets with a thick enough atmosphere and well, maybe the other way around if you think about it, but with a correct atmospheric mix and low enough gravity, you can have yourself some atmospheric thrusters to get yourself near the edge of the atmosphere, and then have some ion thrusters to get you the rest of the way up into orbit and out of there. But sometimes that won't be enough. Well, how about just using gravity? Let's get some artificial gravity blocks stuck onto these objects, because everything is now affected by gravity, but artificial mass blocks are the only thing still affected by artificial gravity, and stick ourselves a couple hundred artificial gravity generators pointing upwards towards the stars. Well, my friends, that's not going to work, because as you might have found out in one of the previous updates, artificial gravity doesn't work in natural gravity, so no dice there, no cheatsy doodle danding. So you're gonna have to do it the legitimate way and build yourself a ship to get off that planet, or never crash in the first place. You could try taking off with just your jetpack on your back, but in atmosphere you're gonna see your fuel, your hydrogen fuel, drop like a rock. So, no. Same thing applies to jump drives. Don't think you're gonna be able to jump into or out of atmosphere. There is no dice there. Also, go ahead and keep an eye on your mass of your ships too, because, well, your thrusters might work with an unladen swallow, but the second you go ahead and fill up that swallow and make it gobble down a bunch of ore, might not fly like you thought. Oh, and I should have pointed out earlier when I was telling you that you had to start a new world, you don't necessarily have to. What you can go ahead and do is go ahead and, well, if you're the admin, do that Alt F10 button there and switch on your special power-up and allow yourself to be Super Spaceman, and do the good old Shift F10 button away, and select and spawn in any planet of your size, choosing, I believe, up to 120 meters, or any moon up to, I think it's 19 kilometers. Both of those are kilometers. 120 kilometers, 19 kilometers. 120 for planet, 19 for moon. Anyway, guys, that is that for this update. Slightly faster video than usual, but let's be honest, it's a billion and one things. If I was to go over it at a normal speed of mind, we'd be here for literally 3 days. Speaking of being here for quite some time, I do have some live streams that I took part in probably yesterday by the time this video's gone up. They should be up on my channel either today or yesterday. Well, either today or, yeah, yesterday. Yeah, that works. Yeah. Yep. And you can go ahead and watch those too if you wanted to see me, Aaron, Scott, and Tazu muck about on planets a little bit, as well as Joel from the Keen Software House community team. Anyways, that is that. Thank you a bunch for listening. I hope you have a fun time taking out those enemy AI factions, dealing with those Saberoid spider monstrosities on the alien planets, and all in all having a great time crashing your crafts into planets. Remember, if you want to be in a cockpit that has oxygen in it, Because you're on an oxygen-rich planet, go ahead and stick a vent on that ship somewhere and hook it into your piping system and set it to depressurize so you can suck some air into your cockpit, too. That was weird. Very weird. Anyways, that is that. Auf Wiedersehen. Ta-ta. Bye. Ho ho ho.